Okay, everybody, so we got another day of coding here. Probably do like either 1, 2 videos. We'll see how it goes. But before I start, for those who've seen Twitter and stuff already, I decided to stupidly get in a conversation with Lex and CPW that basically went nowhere. And it started with me just suggesting that they find more people to help them out, and it went downhill from there. Now, I'm not blaming anybody. If anything, I'm going to blame myself more for what happened because I went into that conversation with no plan, and because of that, it went through a whole thing of miscommunication and nobody really understanding what the other was doing. And to be honest, I'm probably going to get hate mail and mocked for it for the next couple weeks. So yeah, I've already got 4 emails now that have done various things. 2 are death threats. One is calling me retarded, which I don't know if it's hate mail or not. I'm actually looking at that one like somebody just told me I made a mistake, which I already knew I did. And the fourth one told me I was a shitty modder, which, to be honest, I get those every so often anyways. But moving on, because I give no fucks about all this shit and people can go figure this crap out on their own. So we're going to go do modding. So last video, we worked on basically JSON item rendering and various things. Between that video and today, so this video, me and Morton got together. We talked about a various few things. We finally figured out how to get the scale dead on for the models. This means we actually know for certain what the size of a model should be in a software like Blender or Max in order to get it to scale properly in Minecraft without having to apply scale code. This is really important, is if we don't have to scale anything, it's always going to render faster. On top of that, it fixes a lot of other problems. We found out from our testing that when it comes to vertex data, the length of a vertex, so the distance between like the first point to the next point, is actually in meters. So if you go from 0 to 1, you have traveled 1 meter. This is incredibly important as we didn't know what that was going to be. And stupidly, we could have opened up models and figured this out a long time ago, but none of us did. So we actually got together, we experimented, we built out several models. We found out the exact scale that Morton needs to use for all of his models. That turned out to be like a 0.18 something. I originally posted on Twitter it was a 0.0018. Let me go get the file data here real quick. So this is literally the number we ended up with, is this exact number. This exact number that Morton will put into there, and what this does is it takes a number of like 613 and takes it down to 1. So it's basically what that is. It took us a bit of experimentation to do because the normal scale we were using was 0.625 or 0.0625, and we kept having to scale and change everything. For a while, we had a consistent scale factor that we were using, so that way he would give me a model and I would just scale it down in Minecraft. But with this, we finally have a scale factor that I don't have to scale anything, which is incredibly important for the modeling system I'm working on. I know Minecraft has its own modeling system, but I'm building something that is designed to outlast Minecraft. So here's an entire render system to render a single block with a tile entity. So we've got a block here, a tile entity. Here's the render code to render a model, and you're done. Incredibly simplistic, not too hard to use. There will be modifications and variations to this to make it easier to implement. For example, you actually don't need any of this part here. This is all you need. You just need to define, okay, you have a state. The state ID is tile, which is the default render. Model ID is this. This links down to this model down here, and in this model you tell it where your domain is and where your thing is. By default, it's always going to look in the model folder. I will be implementing versions that let you change the folder structure, let you do various other cool things. The amazing thing about this is this doesn't have to be in this file. You can create a file somewhere in your JSON structure that contains every model, every texture, everything that you're going to use in your mod. And then anybody can utilize your models and everything. Now, this is something you can already do in Minecraft, but it's really cool with the JSON system because all I have to do is intelligently call my model something. Like this could be just model thing, and this, instead of this being a cube, because this is what this is a cube, this could be a creeper. And now every single mod has access to a creeper, which is called model thing. And all I have to do is up here in my ID system is replace this with model thing, and I can recycle it. I can change the textures out on these. So I can just say, okay, I want to have 1,000 creepers with different textures. And instead of actually doing this, by the way, another thing you can do is I can have another state ID. So my ID is tile 2, and I can go my parent is tile, so I automatically inherit everything with tile. That's all the translations, all the scales, the rotations, everything. And then if I wanted to change the texture, all I have to do is specify a new texture ID in here. If I just want to change the rotation, like if I had a tile that faced rotation-wise, all I would have to do is go, okay, rotation. If we can do this real quick, then it would be yaw, and then we would go 90 degrees. And of course, I'm having trouble typing here as I've not had any sleep in the last couple of days. Yeah, here we go. So that should fix itself now. So this is literally all you needed to rotate a tile 90 degrees. This is a huge improvement because this is a lot less work that I have to do. This is compatible across all Minecraft versions. Once I update Volt's engine, that is, it's compatible across all Minecraft versions. So the reason why I'm not using the Minecraft's render system is their render system, it changes ever so slightly between Minecraft versions, which means if I write a render for one version, I have to then rewrite it for every version. With this, I don't have to rewrite it. It's done. This is set in stone. The beauty of this is as well is I have a game I'm developing right now on my own. I can take all of this and go load it up into my game once I get the game done. That's pretty huge too because that's cross compatibility. That's less work I have to do. If I make missiles for Minecraft, you guys can play them in Minecraft. Then you can go over to my game and then play them in my game as well, which will be pretty cool. And I plan not to charge for a lot of this type of stuff too when I make the game. The game will, because right now I'm working on an RPG tabletop one, which is not going to get this stuff. It's going to have a JSON structure of its own, but it's a 2D game, so there's not going to be 3D models in a 2D game. But then the game that we're going to be producing after that at some time is a Minecraft-esque like game, but it's going to be more like 7 Days to Die. So a lot of this stuff will function over there. It'll be more complicated than that. Like you probably would have to change your assets between the two games, but you wouldn't have to change all your data. So you wouldn't have to change your rotation data. You wouldn't have to change your scaling or anything. You just have to change a couple assets around to make them fit the other game. And this is going to do a lot of other things too. Like right now we can define all of our block data here. So here's our material, here's our render type. There will be listener events in here. So if you right click with a wrench and you want to rotate via wrench, you would just say, okay, apply wrench rotation listener. And it would automatically put that code in there and you wouldn't have to code anything. This is going to just change a huge amount of work that is required to make content. It's going to make porting between Minecraft versions incredibly easy because all you have to do is update Volt's engine and you don't have to update your mods. But moving on, we're going to work on this system some more. So I'm going to go over to the core here, and we're going to implement block textures. Is what we're going to do. So we're going to go client, JSON, and we need to implement a block render system, which is going to be similar to the texture state. So we're going to copy texture state, and we're going to put it over here, and we're going to call this block state. The reason we're doing this is the system is built in a state system very similar to newer versions of Minecraft. This is actually not intentional, it just happened to be how it came out to be. Because of this, I need to define multiple textures for a block. A block has 6 sides, therefore it needs 6 textures. But the current system only loads 1 texture, so we need to modify that. And with this, we literally just do this real quick. And this will be a new string array, and then this will just be 6. So that's how we're going to define it. So right here, we're going to do this. So we need to specify side, and if side doesn't equal null, we just need to return the texture ID there. And the same thing is going to work here. Actually, this will handle itself automatically, so we don't need to change that. We do need to make this final, so you can't change the array length. That might break things. And then we need to ensure that side is greater than or equal to 0 and side is less than 6. This will prevent array out of bounds exceptions because there's a case that something will fail. And we want to return get texture and then 0 as our default. So this will recursively call itself, but luckily it'll work. We don't have to worry about it too much. I didn't want to copy this whole line down, so. We could return something here to prevent this from being null, but it should already null check itself. The rest of this looks good. we just need to load in the texture IDs, which we can do here in a second. So we need to go to our render JSON processor. Now I'm going to segment this out here later. Right now this is handling items, tiles, and now it's going to be doing blocks. The reality of it is that I would come up with some way that would, based off the render type, would handle each one of these slightly different in order to clean up the code a little bit, because this is going to get complicated, and we're at 215 lines. I like to keep my class files under 300 lines long because it makes it real easy to read, real easy to understand, easy to work with, etc., etc. Okay, so let's see. Put it here. So we're still going to use the render state system for this, but we need to specify. Trying to think of how to do this precisely. No, we're not going to do a separate thing right here for this. We're going to change the internals. So this has a model ID system. So this whole system is designed to be used for models. This is what this whole system's been designed to be used for. So we want to keep this top part because we want to make sure we're pulling our render ID in, and we want to make sure that we are creating a render object and it is being registered, and that it automatically grabs texture IDs and stuff. So we're going to do it this way. So we're going to go if render type equals ignore case block, and this will prevent it from running the default model system. Actually, I kind of want it to run the default model system. This is the tricky part about this, is that if it's a block, I still need the model ID system in case you're using tile entities instead of actual blocks. But then I need the block system, which means I'm going to have to come down here, and I'm going to have to make this code work. So I'm going to go if render type equals ignore case block, and then we want to go else, and then this will be our render state will be block state is what it'll be. Of course, IntelliJ is going to do that stupid thing there. So this will function here. This will guarantee that if we're a model, we're going to use a model state, but then if we're a block, we're not a model. Then if we go down to texture, instead of using the default texture state, we're going to use the block state. Issue with this is I do need to do some instance checks. So if instance, or if render state is instance of texture state, this will guarantee we don't have a cast class exception, and we'll do the same thing right here, just in case we decide to come through later and make a new version of model state as well. Of course, we want to make sure we add it, so this actually needs to be model state. And this is where I need to create loaders for things, because theoretically I would have a JSON loader for model state, I would have a JSON loader for texture state. Then there would be a mapping system built into render JSON where other people could register their own states. So you could have entity states, you could have animation states, you could have different things that you would load and interact with and utilize and cross-utilize, because technically these systems can cross-utilize each other's state systems as long as they understand what that state system works as. I can make a block render a item, I can make an item render a block, entities can render both of those, and then everything else can render entities, because none of this data is dependent on Minecraft. It all loads up and it functions, and the only dependency we have Minecraft-wise is that we have to return icons. We theoretically don't even have to do this. Inside the texture data, we actually hit no on that one. We store the icon, but we didn't have to store the icon here. We could have a map somewhere else that doesn't touch this whatsoever, that then stores all the icons to the texture data. So if you pass in texture data, it goes, oh yeah, we have an icon registered for you. We go ahead and pass the icon back. Of course, it would be more complicated than that. And I don't think this system is even used technically. This is really just a system to get where it's stored on the system file, but I might phase that out because it's not exactly useful. This works, so now we need to go right here and we need to load sides pretty much. So we're going to do two systems. We're going to allow the old system to work because of the fact that it's easier that way. So we're going to go string texture ID equals get texture ID. This will allow us to map pretty much the same texture to all sides. So say if you wanted to actually map something and then you... getting ahead of myself though. So this will be int I equals 0, I is less than 6, I plus plus. And then we put I here, and then we put texture ID. So this will let us map this to all 6 sides, and this is just a lazy init method. Say if you're making an OR block, this is perfect, because OR blocks have the same texture all 6 sides, so this is good for that. The alternative is then we have to start doing different things. I'm going to leave this without an else statement because we'll treat texture ID as if it is side. So there's going to be a few different catches here. Let me look at my notes real quick. I actually designed this whole system out on a piece of graph paper, I think 2 days ago. Yeah, we're going to use side as the exact side, then sides with an S at the end. So let me go ahead and map out all the keys we're going to use. So we've got side, which is the exact side, and then sides is everything but top and bottom. So this is if you have a machine like actually this is if you have a tile like a crafting table. Crafting table has the same texture on all the sides except the top is a crafting matrix and the bottom is a piece of wood plank. So we got all these. Now we need a few different things actually. Technically I need to provide support for direction. So that's going to be the tricky part. Because with sides it's pretty straightforward. You just pass an integer to define what side you are. With sides you just pass the texture ID in. So in here we need to get the object real quick. So this would be JSON JSON object. Render state object get as JSON sides. And then we needed to ensure has exact value. So this needs to have actually this is just texture ID is all this needs. And then up here, we'll do this one real quick too. So this will be get object side. Oh, actually, trying to think of the best way to do this. Because how JSON works is that you can't have a repeat value like this. So if I want to have 6 sides, I can't pass in side 6 times. You have to do something like this. And I'm trying to think in my head, do I want to just do that as the system? Because that would be the quickest way to do this. And that would be, then I don't have to store an ID, I just store a texture. Actually, you know what's really cool about both of these that I didn't think about? I don't need to get this as an object. I could, well, if I get it as an object, I can put extra data in here. Like I can do some if statements later or something. Actually, technically, we wouldn't do if statements because each state should be static, which means it should not change based on internal data. If you have a change, a dynamic change of some kind, you pass a different state back. So we're not going to do that, but what we're going to do here is we're going to use this as a JSON primitive. So instead of doing it this way, we're going to go, actually we're going to have to put this here for a second. So get as JSON primitive and then get as string. So we just get this as a string value. We'll do the same thing here, except this will have a for loop. And then this will go before the for loop. So the side check will be the last thing that runs. Of course, we'll have the forge direction version, which will run as well. You know, actually, we could do it this way. So forge direction, forge direction dot valid directions, and then we're gonna do two versions of this. So we'll have direction.ordinal, which will give me my 0 through 5 value. And then we'll have the else statement, which will get me the forge direction. So in this case, it would just literally be direction.name.to lowercase. And if I go to the forge direction, this should be good because it'll be down, up, north, south, west, east. And of course, unknown won't be passed into this. Then we get this like it's a primitive object as well. And then I need to, in this case, I need to actually just map these. So this should start at 2 because 0 and 1, yeah, so this is 0, this is 1. So 2, 3, 4, and 5 are the only ones we want for side checks. So this will be, we grab this real quick. And yeah, we just pass in, so it's already done, so we don't have to do that. We are going to just get the key though. So string key equals, and then we'll do it this way. That way we don't have to re-get it every single time we loop. So it's one get instead of 4 gets. It's not a huge amount of difference in your performance, but thinking of small little tweaks like this does take a little bit off that load time. Let's see, my phone's been buzzing again. Got more of those hate mail things. Weird thing is they're not showing up over here. Like some stuff wants to show up over here, but some stuff doesn't want to show up over here. I wonder if there's like a special way you can send things to people's phones that they don't show up. That or Windows Mail is broken. One of the two. Most likely with the second one. So let's see. So we want to just grab our ID here. So in this case, this is going to be this value. You know, I'm going to actually do this. So we're going to go final string key 1 equals, and then final string key 2. Not the most advisable way to do this, by the way, because it leads a little bit of ambiguity to what a key 1 and key 2 are, but because we only have 2 keys, we're good to go. In this case, it'll be direction.ordinal, and then this will be key 1, and then down here we'll just do the same thing, and it'll be key 2. And that gets us our loading right there. So we've got our texture ID, which is our global texture for all of our sides. We then have our sides, which is our for 2 through 5. We then got our individual ones, which gets both of our side using a number value, and then our side using the forge direction. You know, actually, I want to check to see if I should use enum directions real quick. So enum directions are if it shows up. Oh, they just called it direction now. When did that change? Something seems weird about this. Oh, it's enum facing is what it actually is. Okay, so enum facing is basically the forge direction enum, except it's handled differently. It's not initialized the same way as the forge direction is, but the values, actually I think the values are inverted. No, still down, up, north, south, east, west. So I could easily just use enum facing and I wouldn't have to change that code. But I'm going to stick with forge direction until we update to 1.8. Because as long as the value we're storing in the JSON doesn't change and the order doesn't change, I don't need to care. So we got this, and we just need to document everything. So load global texture for state, load sides 2 through 5, and then load individual sides. Cool. So this works. All we got to do is now just code the block to recognize that there's a system like this, that it's in place. And we, of course, got to test it. And then here off camera sometime I'm going to migrate this all out to sub things, which I'm probably going to break it in the process. I usually do. After this, I got to implement layered systems, so we could do layered textures. So you could do items that have multiple layers. That's monster eggs are an example of those. We need to go to the framework, block, get block base, and we just got to implement the code in here. Here's some of the listeners I've been implementing. Like, all this code is just to tell stuff that you've broken the block. This whole class file is going to be massive. I'm pulling up something Java does. Java's GUI system works this way. This is where I got the ideal from. It's like, oh, if they kind of use it, and even though it's probably not the brightest ideal, because I think they admit it's not the most ideal solution to the problem that they had at hand, but it does work, and it should not affect performance too much. Okay, here's our get icon checks here. So we need to implement interface for content ID callback. And then we need to register textures here. I'm trying to remember how we register our icons for block states as it is. There is a system. I think there's already a system in place for it. So let me go back out to the client real quick. I need to confirm this, because if there's already a system in place for it, I don't need to worry about it. Let's check real quick. So here's how we do the item JSON registry. So that way any item that needs a 3D model is registered with a 3D model. And then I'm not seeing anything for texture initialization. It's highly likely that there's just something that reloads it every single time. Is paused. Okay, so there's nothing in there. Maybe client data handler? Oh yeah, right here it is. Yeah, right there's a register thing. So pre-event is where everything gets registered. The block base here, so this registry method, register icons, is pretty much the same as this. The only difference is this is native to Minecraft. This is added by the graces of Forge. So thankfully to them we can do this. If not, I would have to do some hacking method, like some static global registry method that would go, okay, we've registered once already, don't redo our register. But even then that would break, which would be retarded. Or we go with an even less or even more primitive version where every time this is called, we re-register all of our textures. Or we come up with some way where we know all the content IDs that the block will possibly use and then go grab all of its content objects and then register its textures, which would be annoying. But luckily this handles itself, so we don't have to worry about that. So we don't need this. I do not need that. So that means I just need to empty this whole method. Leave a mark. Texture registration is handled by client data handler. That's so I remember where that stuff is. Okay, so in here we need to implement this. And we're going to do replace this with a wall real quick. And then I'm going to replace, so this is going to be side 0, and then we're going to put side here. So this is how this is supposed to work, is this side is meta. but I need a way to say each side has a different texture, and the great way to do that is just to switch side to meta. So that way, if the texture fails, we know which texture has failed. We don't get the same texture for everything. So when somebody looks at this block and they go, oh, that's definitely not a normal block. But we're going to do our actual texture registry or actual texture grabbing here, but we have to get the content ID somehow. I don't think block base is registered with the content ID. So we're going to need to create a method for it. I need to find where I was at again. So we're just going to put this right here real quick. So it'll be protect, or we'll make it public. So public string get content ID, and then this will just be meta. The reason we're doing it meta is because this is block based, and we don't want to be giving a content ID that is based on tile entity data or anything, because the tile entity may not be there. If there's no tile entity, then you can't get a content ID, then it's not going to work. In this case, we're just going to return, I believe this stores the owner. I could be wrong though. I feel like I am wrong. Okay, it does not store the owner. It does store the mod. Do we store, let's see what we store up here. Okay, we do store the mod in here. We do store its name. These two should be separated from each other, so we can recycle those real quick. When it registers, it should register using the mod name prefixed to the ID here. Yeah, because we have manager new block, data.registry key. You know what, we're just going to do that. We're going to grab data.registry key, because if that is our registry key, then that's exactly what we want. So data.registry key, and then we want to add meta to the end. We're going to do a double on this though. You know, actually, we're just going to do it this way. So we got content ID, and then I'm going to do the meta up here. So we've got string content ID equals get content ID meta. And then we're going to do our first system, which will be to get the render state based on. Actually, we just want to get the render data. I'm thinking too far ahead here. So client data handler instance dot get render data for content ID, because what I was thinking of, my brain for some reason was getting ahead of myself. The armory guns change based on metadata, so each metadata variation is a completely different content ID. But blocks would not be that case. They would have one content ID for their block, and then render states would be metadata. The only time that would change is if you're doing something like putting like 2 or 3 machines in one block and you're recycling block IDs. Then you would have a different content ID per block set. Right now, block base is built under the assumption that one block is one object, so we don't have to do anything different. So we're going to go if data doesn't equal null, and then we want to get render state equals data.get render state, and here is where we actually want to pass in the meta. Of course, this is iRender state, so cool. That should give me what I'm looking for, because I can call get texture from render state directly, so I don't need to do anything. So we're going to go if state doesn't equal null, and state.get icon side doesn't equal null, then we want to pass back that icon. Return state.get icon side. And then if it doesn't work, then what we want to do is go state dot shoot, this needs to be, this actually needs to be something like that. I think that'll work. It's a little tricky how to name these states properly. I need to close that. Where's my test object? No, we're going to actually open my test object out here because I want to open up a notepad so I do not keep closing it. So tests, resources, content, volts engine, test, block, and we want block tile. Okay, so let's look at how we got this. So our ID is tile here. So tile is the ID we're going to use for metadata, or tile is going to be used for tile IDs only. So then we need a separate state system for block only. In theory, yeah. We'll do it separately. The reason why we'll do it separately is because I do have a few tiles that render the block as like a 2-pixel tall thing, and then on top of that, there's a machine. So we're going to recycle that same thought process. So we want to get this. So this is our metadata grab, and this is going to be our non-metadata grab. So if there's no metadata specified, then we want to go to the default, and the default will happen to be this. And all we have to do is just put this code down here, and it works. And then for some reason, somebody didn't register some textures or something, then it defaults to wool. It's be their prerogative to fix that. But this should work. And this should automatically pass here. The only reason we're going to do a content ID system here is we'll do a callback to the tile entity to see if the tile entity wants to modify the block's visuals. We'll do a callback to a listener system, so there'll be a listener system which will also do the same thing. It'll change visuals. What that'll most likely be is when we do the rotation stuff, there'll be a callback that'll modify how the rotation behaves. And what it will do is you would only have to specify one visual in your thing here of how your tile looks. Then the callback will pre-rotate everything for you. So it'll pre-adjust your texture positions. That way you don't have to specify multiple textures or multiple layouts in here. It'll cut down the work. Right now we'll have to do it the hard way, but in the future you can simplify it massively. But for this, you know what? We can't do it in this one. We're going to actually have to copy this real quick. And we're going to have to take this over to the other block. Because this doesn't render. Actually, another thing I need to do real quick. I need to do this dot is opaque cube. I need a callback for this. Okay, so we already have a callback. So we want to return, so that's always true. So data dot is opaque cube. And we'll create a field for that. And then we'll make something for this in a second. But I wanted to implement that because the render handler for the tile IDs depends on opaque cube running properly, or your tile looks black. And no matter how you change the texture, you change the colors, it will always be that dark visual color because it thinks it's inside of a block, and because it's inside of a block, the lighting system isn't working. There are other ways around it, like you can do get light value. You can set this to 1 and it would automatically fix the problem. And you could set your light opacency, which means how much light passes through your block. But we're not going to deal with that. I need to fix this up here, and then I need to open that folder I was in earlier. And I want to mess with this thing. So this is my default block test object. This just tests if the blocks work. So in here, we're just going to test a default state, and we want to set its texture to, so texture ID, and we're going to say, what do we want to make it look like? Probably want to test variations on this. I don't have a subtype system, so we're going to have to do this like one at a time at the moment. So instead of doing it that way, I want to do it this way. So sides, and then we'll do stone on the sides. Then up, we'll do planks. And then down, we're going to do logs is what we'll do. Now I'm going to have to define these textures, so these don't exist until they're defined. So I need to go find another test object here and copy the texture system out of it. File has been modified by no parameter reloaded. Yes. I don't know why it was modified, but okay. That doesn't have a texture in it. This one does. Okay. So how you define a texture is pretty simple. You just grab it's this code here. So we want to grab the Minecraft textures. So that's the reason where we're just going to pretty much do stone, and then the domain is Minecraft. The texture should be stone, and we define it as a block texture. That should work. And we just need to repeat this. I need to fix my comma placement too. And we put, oh, I hit the wrong key. Okay, so we need 3 textures, and we have to put the colon here or else the JSON system will fail. And then we need to specify planks, and then logs. And then I need to go check to see what the name of these are real quick. So we're going to go out to my asset folder and make sure I'm getting the names correct. Okay, so I did not get the name correct. I need to actually specify a bit of a longer name for these. So for logs, it's this. And we're going to go check to see what planks is in a second. Okay, same story with planks. It needs a bit of a longer name. And that should work. Let me just check stone for the last one so I don't have to reload if I mess up. Yep, stone works. And that's pretty much it on the textures. So these should work. And this is loaded up correctly. This is a type of block. So this is render type block, which means I need to get rid of the tile entry. And the content ID needs to be changed to be the name of the block here, or actually the ID, which the ID and name are pretty much the same. They don't have to be the same. Like you could name this squibbles and it doesn't matter. This is for localization and debug. This is actually what gets registered with Minecraft and is used for all your content IDs. And of course you need to mention your mod or it won't register, because what the mod ID is used for, it's not just used for setting content IDs, localizations, everything else. When VoltsEngine gets done loading all your JSON files, it'll actually iterate over every mod in Minecraft and go, okay, do you want to claim this tile? And if the answer is yes, then it registers that tile to your mod. Part of the claim process is checking to see if this mod entry matches your mod ID's check. There's some other checks in there, but that's the only one that matters. I got material set to rock, and we're good there. And if I run debug, this hopefully will work and we don't have to fix anything because we're getting near the end of the hour stretch. I like to keep these videos around an hour. Probably the video we'll do after this is work on tile needs a bit more, get some listeners to start to work. Like the rotation listeners are one of the things I really want to work on here pretty soon, because I can then phase out code. I do have to fix a few issues with the JSON system before I can actually publish all this stuff to Curse. Right now, the JSON system, for some reason, when the jar is compiled, doesn't want to load the files. So it'll load the external files. So any files you put into your config path, it'll load all the JSON from that. But anything internally, it doesn't want to load yet, and that's a big bug that has to be fixed before I can release the new version of VoltsEngine, and hopefully some of the newer versions of ICBM, because all the ICBM explosives are going to get ported over to this type of code. All the missiles. Once the missiles get ported, that means any of you guys can come in, and if you have a missile model you like, you can implement it, and you have your own little custom missile. Oh, we crashed. Undetermined object at line 14.6 when parsing what? Okay, one of the files I just added, so line 14 is something. Oh, there's a missing comma there. Debug on that. Probably have to tweak like 1 or 2 things to get this to actually work properly. I mean, it's a miracle so far we've coded this all up without testing anything. In the normal development process, you would write unit tests and you would test each individual part as you go. I don't always work that way, especially with modding, because it's not that important. A lot of my client projects and a lot of my non-Minecraft projects, it's unit test all the way. Because after all, when somebody starts involving cache, it has to work or you get yelled at. Even though I've yet to sign a single contract, except, I actually take it back. I've signed a couple non-disclosures. when it comes to development. Like there was a game I worked on which was a clone of Slenderman. That of course that project went under the table, but yeah, they made me sign a non-disclosure, which was hilarious because it, yeah, they were openly ripping off a game. I didn't get anywhere with that either. I wrote them some GUI code and I wrote them some various other things, and then internal conflict caused their project to go under. We are missing something. Is opaque cube? Oh, data is null apparently. That's weird. Why would... That's really unusual for data to be null or something to be calling this before it's running. So let me go up to super real quick and see what it's doing. Oh, there's an opaque check in here. What? What is this? I need to borrow that then. There's quite a few little things I need to borrow out of this. Because they're setting data in the super before the super is done running. What the hell is this? So material canned grass. I actually don't need that. But I need this code right here, because this code needs to run because this will probably break something. So I've actually had issues with this. This will actually fix a few things. One of my missiles has a problem where the light doesn't pass through and it causes the model to render all funny. That'll fix it actually. We'll go ahead and load this up and see if it works. It's a little weird that they're caching opaquency as a variable, but then their isOpaque returns false. You would think you would return your opaquency object, so the boolean you're storing the opaquency in, because that leaves a variable that can be modified that isn't being changed. That technically means that in my block property, when you set opaquency, which I haven't made setters for this yet, but when I put a setter in here, I'm going to have to tell it to modify the block. I need to store the block too in here somewhere, because right now there's no block object, but this is assumed you aren't going to change the block properties after the game's been running. Oh, did we crash again? Yeah, okay. How did we... Or did I hit run by mistake? Let me look at run. Run's a null point exception in process. Oh, I gotta fix this. So float yaw equals 0, float pitch equals 0, float rule equals 0. This is from earlier where I think I was talking over that you could ignore certain property values, but I forgot I have yet to actually code that. So we're going to go rotation object dot has yaw, and then we'll set the yaw value. Yeah, this is something that needs to be done anyways. It needs to be done on all the objects technically. Oh, these are doubles. I'm actually going to be transitioning away from doubles to floats here because of the fact that my precision I need is not very high, so a float will cover it. But yet I'm still using doubles, which have really high precision and storing too much data. If I literally switch all of my stuff from floats or from doubles to floats, you could probably watch a 50% decrease on the RAM usage by mods like VoltEngine. That's how significant that is. It's one of the downsides of the memory model Java has. I've come to the terms with that recently, that I've been learning a lot of programming languages due to college recently, and you get to see firsthand the memory model usage. So you know that argument of C's better than Java? C's actually not better than Java because of CPU performance. It's better than Java because of memory. just straight out memory is just so much better. And because of that, you're not using as much CPU either. Because if you don't have to garbage collect, which Java does, you save yourself like 10% of your CPU usage or more. But that's not to say Java can't fix that. If you're developing an application in Java, you can go out of your way to make sure you're managing your own memory properly to fix things. Like I got a game where I took my game down from 6 gigabytes down to 75 megabytes because I actually went out of my way to fix all my issues. And one of those issues was I had a vertex object, which works just like my pos object, that stored 3 doubles. And I was using this to do all my vertice data and store models and everything. I got rid of that, and it got rid of a lot of data. I got rid of a few other things like some matrix usage and everything, but this should fix. I need to repeat this for this and this here, but I'll do that later. Actually, these two I'm probably going to recycle into a prefab inside the pods class because of the fact that I foresee us using JSON for much, much more in the future. Like building generation is something I'm going to use for JSON. So if you have this structure you want to generate in Minecraft world gen-wise, instead of coming up with some bullshit format that you have to use that has an NBT structure or has some fancy structure, use JSON. I mean, your file size is going to be decent because of how you're doing it, but it means that the data is flexible, easy to access, humanly readable. I can go through your structure and go, okay, oh yeah, here's a stone block here, here's a piece of anvil, so on and so on. It means you can edit it without tools. Most of the map editors, or most of the current building formats have to be done with map editing tools. So you have to go out of your way, go grab a tool, learn that tool, or do something. With JSON, you don't have to learn a tool, you just have to learn the structure. And the structure usually should be self-explanatory. Though I plan to make tools for all this stuff because, why not? I'm building wiki builders, I'm building mod making software. It's all good practice. And then hopefully someday I can hand this all over to another modder, and another modder can take over and continue to do the same work I'm doing. Because, I mean, I'm not going to stick around here forever, especially after today. Still not exactly thrilled with that. I have great respect for Lex and CPW, but it gets tiresome to hear the two bitch and moan about the same issues every single year. It's like every single time it's like, oh, we have a new Minecraft version. All the community's bitching at us. Oh, we're tired of getting bitched at. I'm like, I don't care. Cool, so this is working. It's doing our backup texture though. So we messed something up. But luckily we're in debug mode, so we can actually go and check what's going on. So click here. Our content ID is vvertexblock2. But what is our render content ID? Okay, our render content ID is this. Okay, so we need to put data.mod plus this, and this will fix it. I will have to probably retick the block inside the game to get it to re-render, but that's not too hard. Oh, what are you actually? You are, yeah, you're test block. Okay, so you're still not rendering properly. So we need to debug again. This is interestingly being called, that's right, because I have it in my hand, that's the reason it's being called every tick. Why is mod null? Did I forget to define the mod? No, it's right there. Why is get mod returning null? Oh, because get mod isn't defined. What? That is crap, actually. Okay, so for some reason get mod isn't being defined in this context, so we're just going to call mod directly, and then we'll fix that in a second. Actually, if you can bear with me, I'll just do it this way. So public string get mod and then return mod. And this actually needs to be lowercase, but yeah, that'll work. That'll fix that issue, but we do have to restart the game, unfortunately. So we need to hit, actually we need to go over here and hit close. And then we'll hit debug again, and it should fix, is what it should do. I know I keep saying that, but that's pretty much how development works. It's like wishful thinking, and then you just realize that your code's broken anyways. Oh well. That's one of the reasons I actually love modding though, and I love actually coding, is that there is no real guarantee that your code will always work. So that means there's a lot of failure, and failure is the best way to learn. If you go through your entire life and not failing once, the very likelihood is you haven't learned much in your life. But if you fail daily, you will learn great lessons from your failure. Like say, for example, you trip on your shoelaces. You learn from that failure that you need to tie your shoelaces. That's like a really crappy example, but there's things like sticking your finger in a light socket. I mean, one, you're only gonna do that once probably, because if you live, because it probably will kill you. You'll learn not to never do that again. Usually most people are taught that, by the way. But say you were never taught that, you would acquire that knowledge pretty quickly. I've learned that the hard way, by the way. I've never stuck my finger in a light socket before, but actually I take it back. I actually have, accidentally. The number of times I've been electrocuted in my lifetime is really high. I was ironically one of those kids who stuck a fork into the power outlets when I was like 3 years old. Made a 2-foot jump away from the wall. Was temporarily blinded once because I was trying to use a butter knife to shove a power cord behind a dresser. Cut the power cord, shorted the 2 wires, nice burst of light, vaporized part of the knife. I used to have that knife for a while to show to people. Yeah, lost my eyesight for, I think, a couple hours. Okay, this is still not working, but we're getting closer. Okay, so we have render data. Cool. You know why it's not rendering though? That says tile. You know what? I'm going to be forgiving on this system, and we're going to get multiple IDs here. So I'm going to hit play on this, and you know, I actually need to make an item for this because there needs to be a separate item state for the render here, because you see you can only see 3 textures on here. There's 3 that aren't being rendered, and I've actually had people ask me how to fix that before. Literally the easiest way to fix it is either A, make sure your default render state is built in a certain way, or B, override the item block and force the state. But we're going to do a little way to make this so much easier. So rather than doing this by hand like I did where I've got that 2 if statements, I can just do this. Yeah, we'll put tile there, and then we'll just copy this real quick, and then we'll change this to tile. So essentially we'll be checking it against 4 different keys every single time we go to do something. It's not the most efficient way to do this, but it's the most flexible, because it allows people to declare their thing as a tile or a block, and it allows them to do various other things. Like we could append more keys on here. I could create a getter method for this instead of doing this with just this way. I can call it get and go, hey, how many keys do you want me to try? And a block could go, hey, I've got like 40 keys to try to go through to see what does things. Realistically, you wouldn't have 40 keys because most block states are only going to have like 10. If you end up with 40, you're doing something like animation, and you probably should explore a different system. We are going to do Collada-based animations in here. For those who are not familiar with what Collada is, it's an industry standard for actually modeling stuff. And there we go, it works. And if we go to the bottom, we have a log, top, planks, this, and this is all done with JSON, and we're in 1.7.10 by the way, Minecraft, in case nobody knew that. I mean, you could tell up here, but if you didn't pay attention, you'd be like, oh, 1.8's got that, 1.9's got that, 1.10, 11, and 12 have that. We have it in 1.7, and this is going to be forward compatible, and someday I dream about going back a couple versions too, because there are people that still play 1.6 Minecraft and 1.5.2 Minecraft, and I feel bad for them that they don't get to experience new content. I mean, you get Lex who pointed out, was like, he's frustrated at people making content for older Minecraft versions still and holding the community back. The reason why people like me and other people make content for older versions is we're not doing it for other modders or anybody. We're doing it for the community. If the community wants to play on an older version, we will continue to make mods on an older version. If the community stops playing on older versions, we'll update. But yeah, that works, so we're good there. Now we get to do rotation and other things, but that's going to be for another video, and we end this almost perfectly on an hour. So I'll see you guys later.